Բարև ձեզ, գրադարանում այսօր զրուցում ենք ուկրաինական StopFake.org կայքի գլխավոր խմբագիր Եվհեն Ֆեդչենկոյի հետ։ StopFake-ը զբաղվում է փաստերի ստուգմամբ, մենք կզրուցենք այս ժանրի Ուկրաինային պատերազմից հետո փոփոխությունների մասին, զրույցը կլինի անգլերեն եւ մենք ունենանք թարգմանություն։ Hello Եվհեն.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Եվհեն, how your work changed after the war? You are doing fact-checking, and now in times of war, fact-checking is very important. What changes you've faced?
Yeah, so we started our activities back in 2014, when immediately after Russia's occupation of Crimea, and then the start of the war in Donbass. And actually since then, our war did not end. It continued for all 8 years, both from information point of view and also from military point of view. So this war was not something new, which started in February. For us, it started years and years ago. And all those years we spent actually fact-checking Russian disinformation, which became our main focus. And we've been doing that for a number of reasons. First of all, to increase the level of awareness of audience inside Ukraine and outside of Ukraine. What is disinformation? How it works? What the impact of disinformation is on different groups? And also it was important to identify what are the main narratives of disinformation to make sure that we can follow them. And also it was important to map the main platforms which are engaged in this. So basically we spent all those 8 years building our understanding and knowledge about the enemy and doing the fact-checking all those 8 years.
You use the word enemy. Is it how for Ukrainian journalists you use not opponent but enemy? How it is for you? You did it deliberately?
Yeah, absolutely. I did it deliberately, and that reflects the perception, and not only mine, but also of a wider journalistic community. Because when we use the word in opponent, it sounds very neutral, and it might be more applicable to discussion, for example, or some panel on the conference or something like that. But definitely, we are not at the point when it's all about innocent discussion, because all this disinformation which was used against Ukraine had very serious impact and consequences, because people literally were dying because of this disinformation. And if we talk about the whole war and the incursion on the 24th of February, we should understand that all these things were created by disinformation. All those pretexts which Russia still is using to explain what they are doing and how they are doing and conduct this war, they were built through disinformation. So it's not when you have some informational component absolutely detached from the things on the ground. It works both ways, military and information. And from our point of view, it's about information warfare, or you can call it hybrid warfare, or you can call it cognitive warfare. It doesn't matter, but it implies that beyond the military capacity, there are other instruments which Russia was using to build these war efforts, and is still using as this war goes on. There still actively uses different narratives to impact the outcome of this war. So it's all about war, and if you have war, you have an enemy.
Yevan, I know you combat not only Russian disinformation, but also Ukrainian propaganda, internal disinformation. You continue your work to combat internal disinformation campaigns and narratives and trends, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question because people are always asking, well, you are fighting Russian disinformation, but what about Ukrainian propaganda and disinformation? And my answer is here very, very simple. Ukraine does not need to invent some disinformation because we don't need to mislead anyone about what we are doing, why we fight, what are the objectives of our fight. We fight for our state. We fight against war crime, which Russia is committed in Ukrainian territory. We actually fight against genocide attempts against Ukrainian people. And that's explain our modus operandi, what we are doing. So we don't need to invent this, unlike Russia, which needs to invent those pretexts I mentioned earlier. We are absolutely transparent about our objectives, our ends, and how we do that. We have nothing to hide. And that's why I would not say that I've noticed examples of Ukrainian disinformation, because yes, from fact-checking point of view, you can always find some misinformation which can be corrected. You can find a lot of grassroots activism which sometimes can produce very unexpected results in terms of verification of our fact-checking, mission and other things. But that's not about government which creates all those things, because when we use the word disinformation, we mean the government usually which produce it. It's not something, grassroots. It's very centralized, built through the system of governmental propaganda and disinformation. And Ukrainian government, again, as I said, doesn't need to produce it. And second, Ukrainian government doesn't have too many. Even if they would produce it, they don't have too many platforms to promote and amplify it, because today disinformation is not only about writing some important article for Pravda newspaper. You need to have numerous social media platforms and channels and influencers who would be disseminating and amplifying it to different audiences. That's the biggest component and the most effective component of disinformation. So Ukraine never builds that, but on the other hand, we have very big network of fact-checking organizations and open source intelligence organizations, which are really following all those narratives, including sometimes in Ukrainian domestic politics. But that's not what StopFake is doing. We have the external focus. But some of our colleagues, like VoxCheck, was very closely following and is still closely following Ukrainian domestic politics as well.
StopFake is doing Facebook first-party fact-checking. And as far as I know, after war, you are doing in this fact-checking in Russian language as well. So in how extent it helps you to fight and combat Russian disinformation?
Yeah, I think that's important to make sure that different platforms also contribute to dismantling disinformation ecosystem. And some platforms started it more in advance, like Facebook. We've been working with them for the last 2 years, and we started with COVID-19, and it was very, very effective cooperation. Some platforms are much less cooperative and closed at all to cooperation, like Telegram, for example, which is now becoming the main platform for Russian disinformation because it's unregulated. You cannot remove content if it's harmful over there and other things. So we see the very different approaches among technological platforms and how they see their role in battling disinformation. But in general, every attempt to deplatform disinformation from social media platform is very, very important, because that basically frees the space for real, genuine news and real information. Because otherwise, this space is just usurpated by disinformation, and what people see from their news feeds is overwhelmingly misleading sometimes, and that might be the case with Russian war against Ukraine, because Russia was trying to weaponize social media platforms very rapidly. And after Russian TV channels were switched off in Ukraine, social media platforms became the main battleground for Russian disinformation, because they were specifically looking for entry points, how they can get to Ukrainian media market. And if TV channels are not available anymore, they were trying to weaponize social media platforms. And they've been also creating a lot of websites also to cross-post that disinformation. So, as I said, they invested a lot of time and efforts into creating the whole ecosystem. And that's very, very important to approach this fight holistically. You cannot fight disinformation only in one place or one space, because then it immediately finds a new venues for it. So you need to do that at the same time, at the very, very different places and spaces, and then it would be effective. So for us, it was very, very helpful to work with Facebook, and it was, and still it is, very fruitful cooperation.
If we are talking about hybrid war between Ukraine and Russia, what positions do you have there? Or how it's going on? Do you manage to fight effectively disinformation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and definitely you would not get the same answer from everyone, because it's very kind of judgmental. But from my point of view, Ukraine is at least not losing this war, and there are a number of things why I would say so. Because first of all, as I said, we spent those 8 years learning the enemy. We know everything about it. We know who they are, what instruments they're using, what their approaches are. So it was very, very helpful. It's basically like getting the right intelligence on your enemy's military forces. So it's the same approach here. You know everything about, hardware, military hardware. You know everything about military doctrine. You know everything about human resources on the military side. And then you build your campaign built on this knowledge. So we also been capable of learn all those things and build our strategy based on that. It was very, very important. We created our own instruments. We built our own audiences on different mediums like television and radio and social media and website in very different languages. And we built our audiences on social media platforms, again, in very different languages. So when the incursion of February 24 started, we already had a great team of people working together in place. We had the knowledge of what we need to do. And we had the inbuilt audiences to which we can talk and explain what is going on. And also we built a lot of horizontal networks with other Ukrainian organizations doing the same things, or fact-checking organizations abroad. For example, as a part of International Fact-Checking Network, IFCN, we had access to fact-checkers at all continents, literally, and all of them also been working on Ukrainian information space, so it multiplied our efforts. We were not fighting alone, but we had dozens or almost 100 other organizations also helping us to clean this space. Of course, we've been leading through this process, but also, for example, there was a huge initiative by our Spanish colleagues, which is called, they created the website called Ukraine Facts. And that's basically a database of all fake stories which were found by fact checkers everywhere, and it's collected in one place. So that's exactly what was necessary to be effective. And then we've been just taking one fake by another and just deconstructing it and explaining to different audiences inside Ukraine, outside of Ukraine, why those narratives are malign and why they should not believe it. So that's the strategy. It's simple like that.
Another side of fact-checking is explanatory journalism. Do you produce such pieces to explain the world, the conflict, to explain how it is going. So tell me a little bit about your work on the explanatory journalism.
Yeah, I guess everything we are doing as journalists is explanatory work, because every piece of disinformation we debunk is explanatory work, because it shows what's wrong with those narratives. We also demonstrate how they distribute it through different platforms. And that was a bigger role, actually, of our organization during the last 8 years. So we've been promoting the culture of fact-checking by showing that it's not only about us who can do that, but that's also about the audience which can also participate in this. For example, if you would go to the very top bottom of our website, there is a button called Report a Fake. So that's a simple invitation to the audience also to become kind of do-it-yourself fact-checker. So try to find something, send it to professional fact-checkers, and we would check it for you. And if we find it not to be true, we would also make a story about this. We also did a lot of media literacy trainings. We created a lot of different curriculums for very different audiences, actually from school children to military personnel to police officers. So we those 8 years also training people a lot. And that, I guess, is one of the reasons which explain why there was resilience among Ukrainians when this incursion started. Because they were already prepared much better than back in 2014 when we started. Because, again, we already accumulated some knowledge, and we've been very aggressively, in a good way of this word, promoting that knowledge around. And so that's all about basically explaining this. And again, it was very, very important that Ukraine would produce as many explanations as possible and try to push it to different audiences. Because if we would not do that, Russia would do that. That's how relations between the real information and disinformation is built. They are basically always contesting the space between two of them. And so for Ukraine, it was important to build own narratives, absolutely truthful, absolutely trustworthy, absolutely transparent. So we are transparent who we are, what we are doing, what we are fighting for, again, as I said, and then try to deliver it to different audiences.
Thank you, Yehan, for the very interesting conversation and peace for us, for all of us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Thanks for inviting.